Well, I think I've been formally involved in community development since 1982. So, and I was actually recruited by the then Department for Community Welfare as a, what they used to call a trainee district officer. And one of the things that we were recruited for was to, there were 6 of us from the 6 regions that existed at the time, all Aboriginal people. And I was actually selected from the Pilbara. I was working in Onslow at the time, so my application went in from there. So I was sent off to Perth for about 4 months, and we just trained non-stop for the whole time virtually. It was a huge learning curve for me because I'd left school at 12, and when I was 21 I went to Pundalmara, which is a vocational training centre in Headland. Mm-hmm. And I suppose at Pundalmara you knew a bit about what community development was, even though it wasn't part of the course curriculum. It was small business management and office skills, office administration. So even though I was sort of semi-educated at that stage, I applied for several jobs. I got most of them, but the one I really wanted was the traineeship. So, you know, I hung off. And at that stage in my life, I knew that, you know, like if you didn't have an education or some qualifications behind you, you're up shit creek without a paddle, basically. You'd always be, you know, like working as, I'd worked as a builder's labourer, you know, in the industry, on process lines, seasonal work, shop assistant, waitress. The only thing I never did well was barmaiding. Yeah, when I got to 21, I thought, well, you know, it's time for a change. So when I went down to Onslow, I met a number of pretty interesting people down there as well. You know, they were old welfare officers that had been around, you know, for a long time. And I must say that the majority of them are still my friends and still part of my social circle, I suppose. But yeah, I suppose that was the formal introduction to community development. There was a bloke called Lex McCulloch, because once I'd finished my training, they'd sent me back to Perth, back from Perth to Port Hedland. So I worked there with a bloke called Guy Parker, and like Guy and I were sort of the team. Like we'd go and do the foster assessments and things like that, you know, all the shit work that, you know, give to the lackeys. Well, we used to go and do it, but we had a great time. It was not long after that that a couple of feminists came into my life. One of them was Rosalie Dwyer. The concept of feminism, liberationist theology. I'd always been a union person, so I knew where it came from, you know, I knew what it was. I'd seen it applied in unionism, you know, because I'm a kid of a wharfie, I'm a product of, you know, the communist infiltration, should we say. When I was growing up, always hung out with these people who called each other comrade. I didn't know they were communists, but they were. They helped Aboriginal people to organise, which I thought was great. So by the time I was 10, which was 1967, I had an inkling of what real justice for Indigenous people in their own country was about. And of course that was the same time that we got the referendum. In 1967 I was 10 years old, so I remember everything, which is quite amazing. So that's the base, you know, like I was brought up with the base of poverty, yet knowing that justice was supposed to be as a concept applied to all human beings and that we're all equal, and, you know. So as I sort of took this path, I found out more, and liberationist theology caught me. I'm not a Christian, that's the other thing. It's a bit strange, I know, but of course the liberationist theology model actually comes from Catholicism. And yeah, here I am, no Christian, mate. One of the local priests here I've known most of my adult life reckons I'm a closet Catholic. I crack up, I tell you. Anyway, I hadn't had a substantive position in Headland at that stage, and Lex says, do you want to work for me? And I said, oh, where? He said, oh, Broome. He says, well, Fitzroy Crossing. Yes. In 82. Oh, it was like early 82. And I go, yes. Anyway, 6 weeks, I was in Derby. Went up there and he says, oh, I want you here so that I can actually supervise you. You know, you're a new officer, blah, blah, blah. And community development was just happening everywhere. You know, there were people here like Tony McMahon, you know, Ennio Cecchini and Rain van der Ruwert and, you know, like these amazing men that were around. They were in DCD. And all these other people were coming on board, you know, like that had been recruited who were members of the community or, you know, had a history or, you know. Lex actually recruited a lot of Aboriginal people into the department at the time, and his patch was from Sandfire right the way up to the border, so it was true old Kimberley. Yeah. And we already had a network. Being Aboriginal people, we already had a network. So, and then he brought this bloke over called Russell Gluck from the Northern Territory, who was about reality, you know, like, you have an alcohol problem, deal with it, you know. None of this 12 steps or whatever it is, you know, like this is the reality of it. Do you want to survive? You know, your destiny is in your hand. He would say things like that. And then this amazing man came over. His name was, it would have been 1985, 4, and I think it was Tony Kelly. What a brilliant man. And in all this time, I'd met all these other people, and I've always been inquisitive. It's just a part of my nature. And I have, I'm bereft of tact. Oh, it's simple as that. I've tried tact classes, they don't work. So I just ask straight out questions, you know. And it was really quite amazing because I learned more that way because people were so honest, because I was so straight, I suppose, because, you know, not having tact, you know, people didn't have to be tactful. You know what I mean? It's sort of, that was the way it was. So I learnt so much, and then I started working with the communities more and more because I had all the shit jobs: police community liaison, hospital community liaison, the leprosarium community liaison, you know, like the shit house things that nobody else wanted. And being the only woman in the office, you ended up with everything. You know, like I would be the court officer. I would go in there and, you know, like, because again, no tact, the poor old magistrate was sort of getting really pissed off and would say things like, "You're going to be put into the cells for contempt." So, well, you know, how am I supposed to get a message to you if I can't speak, you know? But that was the thing. I formed really good relationships, and by the time I'd met Kelly, I was open to new information. I mean, I suppose I've never feared changing my mind. You know what I mean? I've never feared adjusting my judgments or my assumptions. I've never feared that. But I want evidence, if you know what I mean. I mean, you don't need, you know, written in blood evidence or anything like that, but I want to know that it feels right. You know what I'm saying? So I realised that with information, you have knowledge. With knowledge, you have power. With power, you have control. And with control, you have the responsibility. And that's the bit that was missing for me. It took me years to work it out. That if you have control, you have responsibility to self-determination, to self-management, to self-governance and self-empowerment. It was that one word. It took me years to work it out. It was the only thing within the framework of liberationist theology that was missing. And I had to make sense of my own world.